It's been about 2 months since the last time I covered Monsters and Memories on this channel. There's been 2 stress tests between that time and now. As you can see, that this video is going to be different than my past coverage of the game because it's a lot shorter than the usual 12+ hour long live streams that I've been doing for the game since the very beginning. Normally I don't have any trouble doing a live stream that goes on that long, but this time around I wasn't really feeling up for doing one because I'm in kind of a bad life situation. As you can see here, I still continued playing my Shadow Knight named Noxol on the Rel server. I ended last week's playtest at about 13, almost level 14. Even though I think Necromancer will still be my favorite class to play in any MMO, Shadow Knight has been a really good experience so far. Let's take a quick look at some of the gear that I ended the test with. I have the Impaler, which ended up being my primary weapon from a Red Mantle quest involving killing some Ashira, the Shawl of Piety that came from Worm's Bane. I really visually like the way it looks. Had the Grave Robber's hood that I forgot to click on up there. I have the gold-trimmed black tunic, which is a Shadow Knight specific item, which I think is the best looking chest piece in the game right now. Black and gold, always a fan. Have some player crafted earrings that I purchased, one of them from Worm's Bane that I got from one of the named, as well as the Worm's Bane neck piece, also from a named, and all the other copper plate was stuff that I crafted myself, and the Malachite copper ring what a player crafted. And I still have my giant deep beetle eye that has a really pleasant blue glow. And I finally bought a full-on lantern, which I don't think this is intended, but it had unlimited fuel, so it was an unlimited light source throughout the test, which was really nice. And the lantern can be worn on your belt, so it doesn't take up any other slots. Over here you can see my pet named Kelsey, who has since replaced Jones. Bones Jones was my pet all the way up until I think level 12 or something like that, when I got a new tier of pet, so I decided that I'm going to start naming them different. So from Jones to Kelsey. Even though I think Necromancer will always be my favorite in any sort of fantasy setting, the Shadow Knight here in Monsters and Memories has been pretty fun so far. Basically just a warrior that has some necromantic abilities, usually more poison, damage over time kinds of things. You have some slowdown. You have your skeletal companion here. There's actually 3 different types of pets you can have. There's zombie, skeleton, or ghoul. When I reached level 13, I finally have my first fear. So here's me terribly trying to do some fear kiting, which I know in EverQuest that was one of the most valuable techniques that Necromancers could use, and Shadow Knights for that matter, where you fear and poison and slow a mob that can be many levels above you, and while they're feared, you just do as much damage as you can and hope that nothing breaks it, and then just keep the fear going until they eventually get taken out. You just have to be really careful about resists and stuff, though. If you take something that's too powerful, it's going to resist your fear, and it's just going to go straight towards you and probably kill you. When I realized that I wasn't going to be able to fit a live stream in during this test, I just started recording video, so everything that you're seeing here was recorded after all of my adventures, so unfortunately it's just going to be me talking while you see me run around in some dungeons and stuff here. This area that I'm approaching now is called Tomb of the Last Worm's Bane, and it's the first major dungeon in the current version of Monsters and Memories, and it's a fully undead dungeon, meaning that if you are a Necromancer or Shadow Knight, you get anti-undead spells very early, and it gives you a huge advantage, especially if you're going to be soloing. So I spent a lot of my time doing invisibility versus undead to run around the dungeon, just like you see here, to find a camp that wasn't already taken, and I ended up soloing some of the named mobs just in a little corner of the dungeon somewhere, and I could use lull the undead or whatever the equivalent was to lower the aggro range to help split things up, and if things went wrong, I'm able to feign death and negate all aggro in the event of an emergency. So this dungeon is really catered well towards undead-oriented classes. It's very clear that the creators of this dungeon put a lot of time into itemizing the place because every class can find something that they can benefit from if you spend any time here. So there's special armor of every category. There's plate, chainmail, leather, and cloth, which covers all the classes. And they start as no drop items, and then you bring that item to an NPC that is outside the dungeon along with some jewels, and then you get the full version with all the extra stats. I unfortunately didn't get any video of this, so I think I have a few screenshots around, but I ended up spending most of my time in a zone called Tel Akir, which I think is technically a dungeon, but it's a huge outdoor area that reminds me a lot of High Pass Hold from EverQuest. It's this idea that you have two NPC races that are at war with one another. In this case, it's the goblins against the Ashira, and you can enter the zone from either side, and then they meet somewhere in the middle. Even though I spent most of the weekend soloing, I did manage to get into a few different groups throughout my time. And I gotta say that this game's community is just so open and welcoming. I didn't have a single bad experience when I was just with random people and random groups, even if it was very clear that the group that I was in all knew each other and I was the odd one out. I still felt like I was a part of the group, like they would text chat with me, even though it was clear that they're probably all on a voice call together or something. So I think anyone who is always worried about like, oh, but I don't have any friends, how am I going to find anyone to group with? It's very easy to just be like /LFG, looking for group, and just messaging people and just being like, hey, could you use this class and level? And more often than not, people will be open and welcoming. So I really recommend anyone to not let that aspect keep you away from playing the game. Like if you feel like that you need to have a predetermined group to go into the game with in order to have fun, that certainly is not true from my own experience. I'm someone who generally solos in games, and even I was able to find groups and had a lot of fun. So the last thing that I spent a lot of time exploring during the playtest are the factions. And after talking with some of the developers in the Discord, it sounds like a very near future playtest could feature a pretty big overhaul to the faction systems, or at least they're going to include a lot more faction related details. And that gets me very excited because I love that aspect of world building. I like understanding, what are the allegiances of everybody that we come across in Night Harbor or anywhere else, and what do they think of the players? How can the players change their own perceptions of them by working for them or against them? And that dynamic is so exciting to me. The first faction related thing that I learned during this test that I didn't realize was a thing until very recently is that the Ashira, which is kind of like the Knoll of the M&M universe, or like the dog people except they're jackals, they can actually be friendly to the player, because when you first come across them, they will attack you on sight. And there are ways to actually improve your faction, and there's actually an Ashira merchant that you can sell things and buy things from. So what was really cool to see is that some people are actually making guilds, and they're kind of in RP, like making their characters be aligned to the Ashira, the protectors of the Ashira. And I love to see that kind of thing happening in the game. And there's even a little quest that me and someone else that I was spending some time with in the game, we found a little quest in Night Harbor about a friendly Ashira, and you had to decide the fate of this like undercover Ashira person, and it was really cool, and I hope that there's more missions like this in the future. The next big faction of interest to me is this group called the Red Mantles, and if you've played any of the playtest, without a doubt you've probably seen them, whether or not you knew their name. They have this gigantic like multi-floor fortress that extends through several levels of Night Harbor, and they have the biggest presence in Night Harbor as well. Like there's easily, 40 to 50 of them here, and there's many named people. So clearly they're a very important faction, but next to nothing is actually known about them. They have one quest that you can do, And I did the quest, and it was about a bounty for assassinating some named Ashira. So I guess they're enemies of the Ashira. And you get this trident that I'm holding that's called the Impaler. And the description on the Impaler says something about like it was a trident that was dropped by a fallen member of the Red Mantle or something like that. And that's all we really know about this group. And after talking with Sean a little bit, A Loving Robot on Twitch, he was mentioning in the Discord that there will probably be a pretty big change to the Red Mantle people. And I just jokingly said, I hope they're into some like sketchy or like illegal activities. And then Sean said something like, you won't be disappointed. So I'm excited to see what this group is about. Now, I have a lot of video footage of me running around the Red Mantle Fortress here, because if it sounds like they're going to get a big overhaul soon, I want to have a record here of what it looked like throughout all the playtests that we've had access to currently. And like I said before, there are several named Red Mantle members around here. There's different rankings and everything, and they seem to have some kind of connection to a god. There's like a theist or something that can be found in their base. And towards the end of the test, I was trying to make my character look like a member of the Red Mantles, because like I guess I just so desperately want one of my characters to have like full-fledged allegiance to a NPC faction in the game. So I was like, I don't know, my guy's already bald, so might as well make him look like he's a part of the Red Mantles. And I was purposely wearing this this shawl of piety, even though it doesn't really help a Shadow Knight that much, but I love the look of it and how it's bright red, and it kind of matches the Red Mantle armor that they have here. So I don't know, made me feel cool at least. So I hope in the future we can do more to help out this faction and learn more about them. Anyone that knows me knows that I love cults in video games. And I'm always really interested in the different portrayals of them, what sort of evil things they do, what sort of maybe good things they do, and just all the other aspects that usually go into them in a fictional universe. And this one particular group here, which is kind of outside one of the gates here in Night Harbor, there's a whole gathering of cultists here. And I spent some time sneaking into their base, looking around a little bit, and there really isn't a whole lot to learn about them as far as I can tell. As you can see here, I did manage to lure one of them out, and I killed him, and he dropped a note, which apparently this note is related to a class-specific quest, and it's not really something unique to the cultists. But I'm hoping in the future that maybe we'll be able to be involved with cultists somehow, or, you know, maybe join them. Who knows? And there's also another cultist group that can be found outside of the Shaded Dunes area. At night they'll show up, so I have no idea if all of these different cultists are related or not. I forgot to grab a screenshot of it, but I did find a broken cultist lantern that was on one of the merchants in Night Harbor, and I bought as many of them as I could, and I have them sitting in the bank. And I'm excited to see where this sort of thing could go too. If it's for a quest, or if we can repair it somehow and get a special lantern, that would be cool. I unfortunately didn't think to get any videos of this, but the last mysterious group that I am interested in Monsters and Memories is this group called the Pale Guards, or at least they're the Pale something. We don't actually know what their names are officially, but in the actual harbor area of Night Harbor, you can see this really big tower that's separated out onto this little island here, and it's very tall, and it has extremely aggressive, very high-level guards that are called a Pale Guard outside. And throughout the playtests, many people have tried to get over this bridge, and they just die instantly. I haven't known anyone high enough level to even come close to combating these guys. And I didn't get a screenshot of this, but in the most recent test, there's actually a gate now in front of the tower stopping people from even getting inside. So clearly, the developers don't want us getting into this tower. The last bit of information that we know about this is that just from observation, and I was clicking around through the windows of the tower from a distance, and I managed to select some bats that were inside. So the really only guess I can make about what the deal is with these guys is that they're probably vampires, because lots of bats flying around, they're pale, they have a big scary tower, and even though during the day they don't like disappear or anything, they seem to kind of hang around day or night, but maybe that's why they hide out in the tower, because of all the shade. I don't know. So maybe we have a mysterious vampire cult or faction or something going on here in Night Harbor as well. So that's just about everything that's been on my mind lately. Thank you to anyone who's been following my journey through the Monsters and Memories playtests. I'm really looking forward to the next one. So for the end of the video here, I'll just show a bunch of random screenshots of some of the wacky stuff that goes on at the end of the playtest. Usually big monsters and things are spawned by the developers, and I pose for album covers and look really cool. So thank you all, and I'll see you in the next test.